Welcome to the Happier Lives Institute's Wellbeing course. In this course, we are going to cover why measuring well-being is important, the history of well-being, how we measure it and what the WELLBY is, whether we can trust measures of well-being, some common questions we often get about well-being, how we translate well-being data into cost effectiveness, and finally, practical tips for implementing well-being data collection. You made it to video 6. Congratulations. We've been on a journey together and this is our final stop. And by now you know that well-being isn't just a bonus, it's the ultimate goal of what we're trying to do. So you've learned why we measure well-being and how to measure it in theory, why it's a reliable measure, who else uses well-being, its advantages over health metrics like QALYs and DALYs, and how we can use well-being data to get estimates of cost effectiveness and work out how we really make a difference. But now comes the big question. How do you actually make this work in your organisation? Hopefully you're on board with the idea of what happens next. So step 1 is using the right well-being measure. Measuring well-being might seem easy. You just ask people how happy they are, right? And well, in one sense this is true. It's really cheap and easy to add a well-being question onto an existing survey you already use. And I think all of the charities we speak to collect some data from participants. However, that said, there are some ways you can improve the quality of your data collection, which will lead to less of those pesky downward discounts that we sometimes have to apply to account for data quality. So I think the gold standard validated questions are from the OECD guidelines on measuring subjective well-being. But since you probably don't want to spend your weekend going through 300 pages of technical documentation, in this video we will give you our top tips for the best data collection practices. Okay, so there are 3 sort of standard measures of well-being. There's life evaluation, affect, and eudaimonia. As we've explained previously, life evaluation is the most commonly used measure. The standard question used to capture this is overall, how satisfied are you with your life nowadays? 0 to 10 scale. Make sure you use a scale of 0 to 10, not 1 to 10. This ensures that your data is straightforward to convert into WELLBYs compared across interventions. This is the most common type of wellbeing question and the one we would recommend that you use at a minimum if you want to record subjective wellbeing data. Affect, someone's mood, their emotional state, and this is colloquially what we would mean by happiness, how good or bad you feel moment by moment. This is the second most common measure and it's often used to add on to life evaluation questions. There's a bit of a question about which one matters most, but we'll leave that aside for the moment. And an example of this type of question is overall, how happy did you feel yesterday? Again, on a 0 to 10 scale. Make sure when asking this question to keep the reference period short about how someone felt yesterday, not about the last month. The eudaimonic questions aim to capture whether people have meaning or purpose in their lives. It comes from Aristotle's term for a flourishing life. It's often translated as that. The most common question to do this is overall, to what extent do you feel the things in your life are worthwhile? Eudaimonia is the least used wellbeing metric, in part because it mixes together issues of how your own life is going, with issues about how your life connects to that of other people, and whether you're living an ethical life. So normally it's just life satisfaction for your evaluations and then happiness for your experiences are the main 2. Besides those 3, we can also use and convert between mental health and depression measures, such as the PHQ-9 and WELLBYs. So mental health scores are maybe not as good as having a direct measure of well-being, but it is possible to use and could be useful in case you already have this kind of information, allows it to be comparable. For the technical viewers, our current approach is to treat a standard deviation size change in mental health scores as being as good as a standard deviation size change in life satisfaction. In the Happier Lives Institute, we are forced to be data omnivores, and this gives us a good way to make use of information where the kind of classic standard wellbeing measures aren't yet available. If you're unsure, then use the first 2 questions from the ONS, from the UK's ONS 4, which covers life satisfaction and happiness. These are widely used and give a solid foundation for wellbeing measurement. If you look into this, you might find a question called the Cantril ladder. This is quite commonly used. These questions ask participants to imagine their lives as ranking somewhere on a ladder, where the higher ranks are better lives, the lower ranks are worse lives. And this is one of the most commonly asked wellbeing questions And in fact, it's what the World Happiness uses for its famous country rankings. That's the one that the Finns are currently leading. However, some questions have been raised about this by researchers in the past couple of years. And in particular, there are worries that the Cantrell ladder causes people to focus too much on their economic situations and social comparisons over how they're really feeling about their lives. And so for this reason, we would prefer you to use a life satisfaction question rather than the Cantrell ladder. Practical steps to avoid pitfalls. An issue can be translations. If your respondents don't speak English, we recommend using vetted translations from the World Values Survey, the VWS. Question 49 on their survey is a life satisfaction question, so all you need to do is find the questionnaire in the appropriate language and lift it out. We recommend these translations because notions of happiness and life satisfaction can be difficult to translate across languages and cultures in an even way, and these are the vetted translations where people have tried to figure this out. And again, please do try and use the 0 to 10 format rather than the 1 to 10 format that the World Value Survey uses. You want to be careful about the order and when you ask your questions, as this can affect your answers. So if you ask about income or health first, say, and then ask about well-being, that might affect the answer to the well-being question. So it could be that you've put health or income in the person's mind, so they conclude when they come to the life satisfaction question that they should think about that in the context of their health or income. So an unhealthy person would give a lower score than they otherwise would if you ask about health first. So our recommended solution, and in fact the standard practice, is to put well-being questions first in your survey. If that's not possible, then you want to try and use a neutral buffer questions or text before asking about well-being. It is important to ensure that participants understand it's a continuous scale of 0 to 10. Sometimes participants think the answers are just 10, 5 and 0, because otherwise you will get clumps of responses just at 10, 5 and 0. This is especially a problem when the question is asked orally and in settings with lower education. So we recommend that surveys include a visual scale with tick boxes at every value to make it sure that the respondents can tick anywhere in the scale. This is something that only occurs sometimes, so it can be worth running a pilot study and seeing how people answer the questions to see if this is a problem or not. You may need to organise some interviews to understand what's the best way to communicate the scale to the participants. Numbers don't work so well for everyone, so how do you measure well-being in non-literate or non-numerate communities? The preferred option is the visual analogue scale, so this could be a simple line with ticks for the integers between 0 and 10. And then participants are told that one end of the scale represents complete dissatisfaction with life, the other end complete satisfaction, or complete happiness and complete unhappiness. They are then told to point out or mark where they see their life. Marking the answer can be a good solution because it can be done without the interviewer being in the room, and we'll explain why this might be important in the next section. People can sometimes inflate or deflate well-being scores for strategic reasons. So maybe they think that a lower score will get them more support, they don't want to seem ungrateful to whoever is interviewing them. So the best way to avoid this type of bias is to make sure that they will know that the surveys are anonymous, or to have them when there's no interviewer in the room. People are more honest when they think that no one will link their responses back to them. You can also consider using an independent agency to collect the data for you. And note that it's actually relatively easy for us to identify when and why there is inflation in the responses. If the results seem too good to be true, then they very probably are. If we do detect inflated results, then we will apply adjustments downwards to reflect these, so please make sure you're careful. Longitudinal data. One-time data collection is not really enough. WELLBY calculations rely on how long the impact lasts, so we need data of the effect over time. Our default recommendation for when to collect data is before the programme, within 2 weeks after it finishes, and at the 6-month mark, and then maybe annually or biannually after that. Adjustments to this default plan depend upon the length of time you expect the intervention to last for. So if it's a short intervention which you only think is going to last a year or two, then you want more frequent follow-ups. Whereas if you think it's a longer term intervention, then maybe you can space them out further and it's not really worth the hassle to do repeated high frequency measurements. We recognise that collecting data is costly and a longer follow-up may not always be feasible. But for our purposes, we do have to be conservative and we will generally assume the worst if there isn't data that we can rely on. On creating a randomised control group, finally imagine an economic downturn occurs during your intervention. you'll probably see everyone's well-being drop, but that doesn't mean that your program has failed. What matters is the difference between those treated and the control group, not the absolute scores. It's also important your control group is made up of similar people to those you treat. So for instance, if the people in one group were much richer than the people in the group that received the intervention, they might be less affected by economic shocks, making your program look smaller than it really is. To ensure valid control groups, comparing treatment to control groups, randomization is key. So without it, we may have to adjust or discount your results. But the good news is there are many ways to create strong control groups, from wait lists to lottery designs. Final thought, please work with us. In this video, we've covered the 3 different types of wellbeing measures and suggested using life evaluation and happiness measures because they're the most common, making your data more easily comparable, and they're generally the cheapest to collect. It's a simple question you can tag onto any survey. We then looked at some practical tips for improving the quality of your wellbeing data, including where to find translations, focusing illusions, clumping, how to deal with non-literate or non-numerate populations, why anonymity is essential, priming people for honest answers, how often you should survey, and finally, explaining why a randomized control group is important. So those are the most important bits of advice that we have. But if you're interested in learning more, please do reach out to us. We'll offer a free consultation call to anyone who's finished this course to help them bring wellbeing data to wherever they work. Whether you're starting from scratch or refining an existing approach, we can help ensure that your data is robust, reliable, and meaningful. We can help you create custom experimental designs to fit the work of your organization. If you want to book this in, you can go to our website and fill out a form on the consulting page. You can also sign up to our newsletter on our website if you want to stay up to date with the latest and greatest developments in wellbeing science and impact measurement and making a big difference, so you can get involved. So we look forward to chatting with you and working together to bring about the wellbeing revolution and to focusing on what really matters. Thank you very much.